You're listening to Thursday Night AMP on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Starting with the lovely and talented Abby.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Abby. I hope you're ready to talk about all of this excitement we've got going on in the next few days.
Yeah, roo, rah, rah.
Well, I know you're not thrilled about Survivor Series, but hopefully there's some part of the tag league that's got you going.
Roo, rah, rah. No, not particularly.
You're not even excited about Asuka and Mickie James on Saturday night?
Kind of, sort of, a little bit, but I don't know. This just feels like a rehash. Takeover kind of feels like a rehash of things they've already done.
Well, with Samoa Joe and Shinsuke Nakamura, it definitely does trend that way. But before we get into that further, let me introduce the other co-host along with myself, Stevie J. It's the Great Sudoku, a.k.a. Jason.
Hey, Stevie, you ever grab anyone by their Joey Styles before?
No, I never have, and I never would.
Well, there you go.
Yes, I suppose we might as well start with that topic since it's been all over the internet and back again, and I can hear Abby rolling her eyes right now going, woo, woo, rah, rah, because she's probably sick of this. But we haven't talked about it ourselves, so we're going to right here and now. Basically, Joey Styles made a very inappropriate joke during a live Evolve broadcast, even though they were given, and by they I mean the entire roster of talent, announcers, managers, everybody was given an order from Gabe Sapolsky, do not talk about politics. We want people to watch this and enjoy themselves and not think about politics for a while. And then Joey Styles immediately goes, well, I was told not to say something, but I was given a live mic. And you never give somebody a live mic and tell them not to say something because not Joey Styles, I do what I want. And then proceeds to tell a Donald Trump joke. And everybody was just like, did he really just say, grab her by the... And he didn't even finish it, but he didn't need to.
That's not even Joey Styles' shtick. That's something that Joel Gertner would have done back in the day in ECW. But the only problem that I have with it was that he was told not to do it, and he explicitly went against that. And yeah, of course he's going to get fired. You know, he explicitly did what they told him not to do. When you do that in jobs, it gets you fired.
Well, it would have been a fireable offense either way. It was offensive, and it was something he was told not to do. For either one of those reasons, he deserved to be shit-canned.
Yes, he did. And anybody that is trying to defend him is... There's no defense for it. And I'm going to say very little about this because I've written about it already. And, you know, getting involved in a conversation about sexism in wrestling is obviously not something that I am, you know, qualified to talk about in some circles. But I will say that it wasn't, the problem was not so much that it was a Trump joke. The problem was that it was a joke about sexual assault directed at the only woman on the damn show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem that a lot of people had with it. And I don't care if he was told not to bring politics into it. That joke alone and the tone of it should have got him fired. And it makes even less sense when you read his so-called apology.
Right. And I read the apology before I had actually seen the clip. And in the apology, he said, well, I was thrown under the bus because I thought we were doing a different kind of segment, so I had to ad-lib. But then when I saw the actual clip, I was like, you cannot tell me you were thrown under the bus and you were ad-libbing because you said on the mic, I was told not to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, which tells me that's not an ad-lib, that's planned.
Yeah, and he said he panicked. No, if you watch the clip, and hell, y'all go out to my Twitter account, I've retweeted it. The person that did it the first time, Arsenic and Johnny Ace is the account that put it out there. He wasn't panicked. He was as cool as could be. And for somebody who's been doing this for 20 years to say, oh, I panicked and just did this off the cuff. No, you didn't.
No, he didn't panic. He went into business for himself.
Yeah, he did. And it's 2016. It's not 1996. Trying to be edgy with something like that in this day and age, in this climate that we're in now, is not edgy. It's trashy.
Well, as you referenced, Abby, there have been a lot of people who've been trying to stick up for Joey Styles ever since the feces hit the rotary blade on this one. And the two responses that are the most memorable out of all of them that I've seen, one for being reasonable and the other for being unreasonable are Mickie James and Dawn Marie. Now, again, what he said was not defensible and not worth defending, but Mickie James at least took the tone of, Joey is a sweet man. He made a mistake. He's done a lot of good for women in wrestling, and I support him and I love him dearly. I'm like, okay, I don't agree with what he did, but I understand where you're coming from, so that one I'm okay with. But then Dawn Marie, out of nowhere, decided, I need to humiliate every single person who fired Joey Styles because they're a bunch of idiots. They're a bunch of marks. They don't know anything about the wrestling business. How dare they even take on Joey Styles when he's a legend and they're just a bunch of scrubs? And in particular, she went after Mike Quackenbush and Chikara for having the temerity to fire Joey Styles. Now, Abby, do you want to say anything about that, or do you want to leave that to me?
Well, I mean, you have to look at who this is coming from. And she's about as relevant in the business as, today as Vince Russo or Jim Cornette is. And I take what she had to say with a grain of salt because, like you said, she went after Gabe. She went after Quackenbush a hell of a lot worse than she went after Gabe. And, to try to stick your feet back in it or your head back in it or your damn opinion back in it after leaving the business and bitching about it like she has in the past, no. It's just, it wasn't a smart move, and it wasn't a good move if you actually read what she wrote.
Oh, I did. And for those of our listeners who haven't, I'm going to share an excerpt, and only an excerpt because it's incredibly long and incredibly profane, so I'm limiting myself to the following section. She says, to my fellow contract professional wrestling brothers, since many of you are still looking to create greatness and are worried about being politically correct, I will say it on behalf of all of the boys that feel the same way. Fuck you, Quackenbush. You'll never be one of the boys, no matter how talented you are in the ring, no matter how hard you try, or how many promotions you manufacture to exist in, because the real business of wrestling is done in the back amongst the men that honor and respect those who came before them. Unquote. Now, the reason this is relevant to me is because Mike Quackenbush responded without naming Dawn Marie, without saying who it was directed at. He had what I consider to be a very classy and very professional response to this whole situation. And I will quote from him, as I just quoted from her, fair is fair. We've got to get both sides of this on the record. So here's what he had to say. Got a letter that was kind of angry, but also kind of true. It's true that when I was first breaking in on the East Coast Indie, I was different, and by wrestling standards, I was small. I was 19, dumb, gawky, and immature. I liked weird wrestling and did overly complicated moves and showed up in my homemade gear. People rolled their eyes, and I was the punchline of jokes. In the locker room, it was made clear I did not belong. I was made to know it backstage, and sometimes I was made to feel it in the ring. Now, he goes on, so I'm going to skip ahead a little and get to the main point he makes at the end. He says, thank you. Thank you for reminding me that not just that I am an outcast, but the feeling of being ostracized. You've given me new resolve. This simple reminder of the sting of exclusion makes it so clear to me that pro wrestling must grow to include everyone.
Yeah, and the last thing he wrote was, ideologies like the one in this letter, they are relics of the past. And yes, the old idea has written, the history books, but the future, that is ours to write. And it is. I mean, it's not the attitude era anymore.
Mm-hmm. And it's not, like Dawn said, the men of respect showing each other honor and doing the old wrestling handshake in the back. The business isn't the same as it used to be like that.
No, but I mean, you still need to respect those that came before you. Respect is still a big part of it. But politics is an even bigger part. Like it always has been. That's never going to change. Right. You look at the John Cena's and the Roman Reignses of professional wrestling. That's not going to change. But going out there and doing something like Joey Styles did, there's no place for it in 2016. None. Really especially in somewhere like Evolve that, they don't do shit like that. I could see if they were in CZW doing shit like that, or in Insane Championship Wrestling over in Scotland doing something like that. Because They're adult promotions. They're for adults, even maybe PWG, but not Evolve.
No, and the irony of her ripping into Quackenbush with so much profanity and so much venom is Chikara is the most family-friendly, young family-oriented pro wrestling promotion that I've ever been to a show at. They don't even chant holy shit when a wrestler does something insane. They chant holy poop, holy poop. Some people may think that's silly, but I actually admire them for sticking to their guns of making it family friendly. That's what they want. That's what they do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, I said after it happened, hopefully any independent promotion out there with any lick of sense will distance themselves from Joey Styles. And they did, and that was smart.
I think he'll still end up getting work somewhere from someone who wants to thumb their nose at the wrestling business and say, well, I don't have to be politically correct, so Joey Styles can work for us.
Yeah, let him go work for Dixie.
Well, I think even Joey Styles would draw the line there and say no thanks.
Well, if somebody wants to hire them, then that says a hell of a lot about them, And what it says about them is not good.
I suppose I don't really want to see Joey just become a pariah, but he does need to know that it was wrong. And whatever penance he needs to make for that, I can't define that. I don't think it should just blow over. That's, I guess, where I'm coming from is it was a serious mistake and it was an arrogant mistake and there need to be consequences and there have been consequences, but I'm not for the guy ending up broke and homeless.
No, I'm not either, but if you want to see how sorry he is for what he did, go back and actually read his apology that his buddies over at, what is the site? The PW Insider put up. Mm-hmm. Because that's where the letter went to.
Right. I read the apology, and again, I sort of believed it until I watched the clip, and then I thought he was full of it.
Yeah, watch the clip. I mean, Evolve heavily edited, the thing, and Joey said, nobody was upset. Nobody was upset. Nobody was upset. Hell, Gabe came out immediately and said he was pissed off. The guy from Flow Slam, I think his name is Jeremy Botter.
Yeah, Jeremy Botter
came out after
called him a liar on Twitter.
Yeah, he was upset. He wasn't happy about it. So find the clip.
I want to quote him because he said, the reason I didn't respond to you was not because I wasn't mad. It's because Timothy Thatcher was being loaded into an ambulance when you came to me. He was a little more concerned about the wrestler who might be seriously hurt than the guy who was trying to make amends